But yeah, I want to ask you, Noah, about Dave Roberts, and we're going to dive a little deeper into the Doc talk. And Andrew Freeman, Doctober.
We wish.
I wish, man. Doctober means it ends on October, mid-October, right? Mid-October. Yeah. There's only 15 days in October, not 31. No, I'm just playing. That's how we deal with pain here, right, Clint?
Yeah.
Laughing is healing, right? But Andrew Friedman said at his exit press conference, I personally don't think the criticism that Dave has received has been fair. I think it's human nature to want to point the finger at someone, and I feel like this is an organizational failure in the postseason. Do you think that Dave Roberts receives too much criticism from Dodgers fans for the Dodgers' lack of performance in October?
I don't think he deserves too much because he is the manager of this team, and as far as we know, is making the decisions. Here's what I will say about Dave Roberts. Sometime in the end of the season-ish, the Padres had reports of a meeting that came out with Bob Melvin when he, I guess, screamed at his team or kind of, lit a fire into them and said, this is what we need to do if we want to make the playoffs. That is what maybe helped propel these guys to really want it and really push. Dave Roberts had none of that. And Clint mentioned it. There were a few moments where, that strike 3 to Mookie that was outside, or one of the other calls that if he goes out there and he yells at an umpire and he even maybe gets ejected from the game, you light a fire under your teammates, under your players that says, all right, this guy wants it. Let's go play for him. And all he does, he just, he claps in the dugout. He pats people, or he gets a little mad, but he's not yelling. He's not angry. And he's not running out and defending his players. And I'm not saying this is his fault, but it is a manager's job to have his team ready and pumped up. And there were no reports of a meeting that went on, nothing. I mean, it was just a normal series for this team that they just happened to lose.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point with Bob Melvin. I said I was like, if Bob Melvin is the manager of the Dodgers, maybe they're playing today, because I think that at some point your voice, it doesn't carry the same amount of weight when you're hearing the same message year after year. I've always said Dave Roberts, great guy, terrible bullpen manager. Great motivator, but doesn't crack the whip like some other managers out there. And I think the things that he does great, he does have that infectious energy. His charisma, his personality, that's what the Dodgers love about Dave Roberts. But if you're not applying this sense of urgency to your players, if you're not pushing them and motivating them, I think he gets credit for Max Muncy's turnaround, sticking with his guys. But yeah, I just think with Dave Roberts at the helm, and I'm not saying to fire Dave Roberts, but I definitely think he's firmly on the hot seat. I don't know, where do you stand on that? Do you think Dave Roberts is on the hot seat? I think that you look at his career, 653 and 380, a 685 win percentage, 400 win seasons, and let's be honest, you're not going to fire a manager that just won 111 games, but he is the Doc Rivers of Major League Baseball, the Mike McCarthy. Coaches that they perform well. They win a lot of regular season games, but when it comes to the postseason, there's some panic in Dave Roberts. But what are your thoughts on Dave?
Dave's job is safe. It's not going anywhere, even if they come out and somehow lose or win only 60 games next year. Something probably happened to do that. This is like the all-time winningest by winning percentage manager in Dodger history. Won 111 games. He gets along well with the players. He gets along well with the front office. His job is not ever going to be. It will take a long stretch of mediocrity and failure and just straight up, like I've said before, he's gonna need to walk in to Andrew Friedman's desk, his office, and just dump straight on his desk to lose this job. I'm sorry, everybody. Dave Roberts isn't going anywhere, and I don't think he's necessarily the problem. But it's always so nuanced, because I think even on Monday's Blue Heaven, we were kind of like, this isn't all on Dave Roberts, but then we're like, here's all the things he did wrong. At some point, these players got to do something. I don't think it's all on Dave to inspire his team and get them motivated to go out there and win. Winning should be your motivation. They've been there a lot, done that a lot, not always to go get these rings up front. There needs to be another voice. There should be somebody on the bench who can, not necessarily a coach, a player that can be on the bench and be like, what the F are we doing here? And that's where I think he needs the help. But his job is very safe.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think his job is safe, and I think the reason that is because he's Dave Roberts, but he's Dave Robots, right? So he really is a robot. He's a puppet to this organization. And yes, he says that, oh, I'm the guy who ultimately makes these decisions. I just use all the information, that it is a collaborative effort. But if that's the case and you are making your decisions, how can we defend Doc for his game calling in Game 5 of the 2019 NLDS? How can we forgive him for taking out Tyler Anderson, who had retired 11 of the last batters that he faced? They couldn't touch him. He allowed 2 singles that night. Tyler Anderson probably could have pitched a complete game for all we know, but instead you panic. And that is my issue with Dave Roberts, is he panics when the moment gets too big. But
it's not all him. Just to point that out, it's not all him. It's also Guerin. It's also Mark Prior. It's also the script. It's the front office of script of, hey, we don't want him facing Machado for a 3rd time. I listened to an interview on the 570, and it was with Andrew Friedman. His thing was, chances are, Anderson's not going another inning after that. So it's like they just kind of assumed he's not necessarily agreeing. Friedman's not necessarily agreeing or disagreeing with what they did, but that think tank assumed just like he's not going to go 7. Let's just get him out now. We have all of our guys lined up. Those guys that had got it done every most opportunities they could in the regular season, but now all of a sudden they can't. And Dave is going to be the guy who has to fall on the sword, because if it went right, we're not having this conversation. And it should have gone right, but the moment got too big too quick for Kahnle. A couple unlucky moments in there, and then how quickly it can unravel with a hot team is what we saw.
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. But on the same token, it's like the more decisions you give him, the more opportunities you give to bullpen pieces, the higher the risk is that one of those guys isn't going to have it during that game. And that person happened to be Tommy Kahnle. And when that didn't go well, he goes to Yency Almonte instead of Fireman Phillips. And that's where I feel like we were bamboozled. We were hoodwinked. We were lied to because we were told it was closer by committee. But no, you didn't use your high leverage guy in the biggest spot like we saw in Game 1. You didn't, like we saw earlier in this series. You go to Yency Almonte, and I think the bullpen management was bad. I think he was really good in Game 1. I think Game 3, the way you manage that bullpen, and you only get an inning and a third from your starter, and then the next night, you only get 5 from your starter. It just was never going to work. It wasn't a sustainable plan. But next question I want to ask you about Dave Roberts is, do you believe it's collaborative? Do you think that it's from the gut? Do you think that it's Andrew Friedman, he has an earpiece in there and he's like a host from Westworld and he's just managing him that way? I mean, what do you personally believe?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think it's from the gut, because I feel like if it was from the gut, there'd be a lot more baseball decisions going into it than the analytics like you were talking about. But also, I mean, I don't know for sure what it is. I mean, I definitely have to imagine it's kind of a collaborative effort. And like you said, Dave Roberts is the guy who's going to listen, and he just always is smiling, and it's just, he kind of is okay playing the role of, this is my decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there's no way that Andrew Friedman is not somewhat telling him what to do, or at least has a group in his ear that's saying, here are the analytics, here's why we're not going to let Tyler Anderson go more than 5, or Kershaw more than 5 after he retired 9 in a row, or Urias more than 5. I mean, obviously there's something more to it, because I have to imagine that Dave has a little more of a baseball feel, that he would maybe slightly change this a little bit. But I mean, I don't know. I really don't know.
Especially being the type of player he was in his playing days. He wouldn't subscribe to this. So good points there.
And I'm just getting whiplash. Watch him go from the dugout to the mound. I feel like I'm watching a tennis match out there. I just think that you have to put a little more trust and have a little more feel in those situations. There was no question that Anderson was dealing. Kershaw could have got another inning in Game 2. So I just personally feel that hopefully they learn from this, and Dave learns from this, but he continues to make the same postseason mistakes again and again and again. And the one time they did win in 2020, he managed the bullpen properly. It was a masterclass in Game 7 of the NLCS and Game 6 of the World Series. So hopefully Dave can learn from this. And yes, what he does have, what he does possess, it's tough to teach. It's tough to coach. The personality, getting all-stars to buy in, that's tough to do. So if you could figure out the game management style, or maybe Andrew Friedman and the powers that be learn to just take their foot off the gas a little bit. Look, I want them this offseason to do what they did in the movie Office Space, where they take the printer to the field and Michael Bolton punches lose it and they're breakdancing. I want to see them do that to one of these computers this offseason and say, hey, yes, we love the information. We love the analytics, but sometimes the eye test, you got to trust your eyes in certain situations.
But it's also so tough to do that when your team just won 111 games using that methodology. That's where it is like a very nuanced subject, because they have success doing this, but we also know the postseason's a different animal.
And that's what I'm saying. I agree with you. Like I said, regular season, strong cup of coffee. Postseason, Four Loko with a 5-hour energy and some booger sugar, right? So the difference is they're not taking into account the human element of what it's like to pitch in the postseason. Some players are built for it, some players are not.
Built
and I think that they're just built different. They got that dog, so to speak. So just talking about this organization as a whole, I want to shift gears a little bit and just talk about the overall philosophy. So this is not on Dave Roberts at this point. I do think that it's a philosophical indifference. And I think that this, like you just mentioned, they know the recipe for success in the regular season. They know the ingredients. They know how to win 100+ games. But now we have a big sample size. We have 10 years and one title to show for it. They need to make some changes in the postseason. What kind of philosophical changes do you want to see this organization at least consider? We know they're looking for a baseball strategist. Noah, I think you should apply for the job. You have the acumen. You could definitely crush it in that position if you weren't for us. But what philosophical changes would you like to see?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of what we've been talking about. I do think there has to be a little more of a baseball feel to this team and less of an analytical, but then it's tough because they, like Clint said, they just won 111 games. Clearly they have it, but the postseason is different. And sometimes you need to trust your guys who have been doing it thus far. And there was actually a quote from Joe Musgrove after Game 4. I don't know if he was just saying this to kind of just, poke the Dodgers a little bit more, but he said, once we got Anderson out of the game, he's been giving us a tough time all year. So once he came out of the game, we knew we had a good shot. So it's that kind of thing where it's like, when Dave Roberts is managing this game, he knows that Tyler Anderson's dealing. He knows he's been good against the Padres all year. And even though they don't want him again the third time around the order, it's like you have to just trust your guys a little bit. And you have to kind of let them play and know that your best players are there to win these big moments and these big games.
The thing to me is, we talk about them not adapting, not adjusting, but the thing is they kind of changed their complete game plan, their strategy from the regular season to the postseason, because regular season, TA is out there for another inning or two. Cody Bellinger is in the lineup. Joey Gallo is probably in the lineup. All of a sudden it becomes this, we like the matchup, or he's been there before, or it's about the experience. They've also experienced a lot of L's in October. Do you think there's something to that, to the fact that, we want them to change, but the ways they do change, it's like, putting gold on a piece of shit and saying, hey, we're going to try it this time, or we're giving you this best piece. Is there something to that? I mean, stick with what got you there.
I mean, I think that it felt like, especially this year, because they had so much time to prepare for it, considering they won their division by 22 games, that they did have this master plan. And there were some buttons that they pushed that I felt were the wrong buttons. And yes, Trayce Thompson, he did draw some walks. He got some base hits. The defensive play he made in Game 4, it was impressive. But Cody Bellinger was your second best hitter last season. Cody Bellinger is last postseason had a 907 OPS, had the game-tying home run in Game 3 of the NLCS, had the game-winning hit against the San Francisco Giants. And yes, he did not look good at the plate, but this is a guy that in his core, his DNA is Rookie of the Year, World Series champion, MVP. You have to go with guys that I think have a better chance of achieving that postseason success. And yes, Trayce Thompson, he was fine. He wasn't terrible. I think a lot of fans are riding on him, but you never know. Cody Bellinger might have gone up there and ran into one. And same thing goes with Chris Taylor. I mean, they're two guys that carried last year in the postseason, didn't have an impact at all. And yes, Chris Taylor was banged up. I think they did Cody Bellinger dirty. I'm just going to put that out there. I think everything that Cody Bellinger's done for this organization, when you consider the game-changing plays he made defensively, I mean, look, other than Kirk Gibson, his home run in Game 7 of the 2020 World Series is the most iconic and important Dodger home run in this franchise's history, and they just threw him down to the ground. They treat him like a couch. They just put on the sidewalk when you're moving, and it's just, please take free couch. I mean, I think they did him a little dirty strategy.
Offer up curb alert right there.
Offer up curb alert. So yeah, changing up your strategy. I welcome the idea that he was saying it is a meritocracy, and you saw they did move off Craig Kimbrell the way they did. But the reality is they put a lot of trust into guys that didn't deserve and earn that trust. So I think there is something to that, Clint. I think it's a great point, and I think it's a fantastic point to say that, yeah, Tyler Anderson's a guy who threw 123 pitches in an inning this season. He had thrown over 95 pitches 5 times. He threw over 95 pitches in a game, not 5 times this season, threw those 123 in his perfect game bid against the Angels. So he's a guy that absolutely should have gone deeper into games. But yeah, I definitely think that they did switch their style up, and they kind of think they're the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
You know, and
great point there.
And I think that, yeah, I think they kind of think, okay, we're going to outsmart this team. But really, I think the bottom line, I do think if you're going to slice up this blame pie, I just think the way this roster was constructed, they just banked on too many of these injured players to come back. I mean, we didn't even see Dustin May. There was no Red October. Blake Trinan, they throw him in a situation where he gives the home run to Cronenworth. Tony Gonsolin didn't look right. I think that Andrew Friedman realized at the deadline that with the expanded postseason and the price tag in the market was inflated, that, hey, he couldn't get some of those players like he got in the past because there were more teams in the hunt. So I definitely think roster construction at the end of the day is the biggest factor.